Jourdain trying to stop it. Nolly fading away from the rim and 2.
The men drop an overtime heartbreaker against Cincy, now losing 5 of their last 6.
Plus, with the women's season coming to a close, we will discuss all of the scenarios for postseason play.
And I'm Emilie Cochrane, live from the Leocore Center. We'll review the status of Temple's leading scorer as we get closer and closer to the conference championship. Courts in Session is live and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome into our final edition of Courts in Session before spring break. She's Brielle Berry and I'm Luke Meli. With next week off and the conference tournament set to begin, we've got a lot to get to.
The biggest issue surrounding basketball on campus starts and ends with Caleb Battle.
Temple's guard has missed the last 2 games with no word on why. Let's head over to the Leocore Center where our third host Emilie Cochrane is standing by with an update.
There being only 2 games left before the conference tournament, Battle is the team's best player. What is the latest on any possible return?
That's exactly right, guys. It's been 12 whole days since Caleb Battle was first benched during a Wichita State game after an argument that he had with head coach Aaron McKee. Now, this situation is being handled internally and, quote, within the family. But the men's team did have media availability just about an hour ago, and McKee and Dunn did speak about where Battle stands on the team and what changes need to be made down to the stretch.
Yeah, nothing's changed. We're just moving forward with these guys. Just take it from there.
You know, we really just do our best to kind of just play within each other and together. You know, with whether we missing guys or we have all of us right now. So, you know, we've been doing a little bit better job on moving it. We still get stagnant at it a few times and critical times in the game where we are too stagnant. You know, and not enough movement, but we've been doing well with moving it around and getting guys involved, so we just got to keep it going.
Statistically, the Owls are 1-1 without Battle on the court, but one thing's for sure, he is the team's leading scorer right now with 18 points, so we can't necessarily tell whether or not they're doing better or worse without him. If Battle hasn't practiced since February 16th, I can't necessarily see him fitting into these next 2 games and into the AAC tournament when that rolls around. That's all I have from the Leocore Center for now, but I'll be back in just a few minutes to preview some players on the women's side. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Emilie. The men missing Battle for the 2nd straight game and a trip to Cincinnati last Wednesday. Temple up 6 in the first half, but Cincy's 50% three-point shooting in the opening 20 minutes puts the Bearcats up 3 at halftime. In the second half now, Cincy up 6. Jamil Reynolds cleans up his miss and throws down 2. He had 11 points, one of 4 Owls in double figures. Later, Dan Skillings, the Roman Catholic grad, pours in 3 of his career-high 15 points. Owls still trailing with 12 minutes on the clock, but it really should say it's Dame time. Dunn knocks down 3 of his 4 three-pointers in the second half, including this transition triple to tie the game up at 65. But the Bearcats respond with 5 minutes left. Cincy goes on a 10-3 run to retake control. Now fast forward to the final 30 seconds of regulation. Temple gets the stop. Hyzier Miller brings it across, surveys the floor, finds Zach Hicks, and Hicks drills the game-tying 3. This broke a stretch of nearly 8 minutes without a field goal for Temple and sent the game to overtime. In OT, Landers Nolly took over for the Bearcats, scoring 9 of his 13 points in the extra session. Temple hanging in. Miller lobs to Reynolds to make it a 2-point game. Now in the final 20 seconds, same situation as regulation. Miller drives, spins, but misses long on the jumper, and that buries the Owls. The Bearcats win it in overtime, 88-83.
Damian Dunn joined the 1,000-point club in the team's game versus Cincy Wednesday night. Dunn became the 55th player in men's program history to eclipse the 1,000-point mark. But despite the team's loss to the Bearcats, Dunn dropped 34 points and has scored 72 points in the Owls' last 3 games. So, Luke, there's a lot to discuss. Like I just said, Damian Dunn finally reached that 1,000-point mark, which is pretty incredible for Damian. He was 12 for 14 from the free throw line in that game against Cincinnati. So, majority of his points did come from free throws, but he shot 9 for 21 from the field. So, it wasn't his best night shooting from the floor. And also want to talk about Hysteer Miller. Double figures in 4 straight games. He was the team's second leading scorer, so it's been really nice to see him step up offensively, especially with Caleb Battle's status being kind of uncertain. And other guys need to continue stepping it up on offense. The Bearcats were on fire from the free throw line. They shot 93% compared to Temple, who shot about 73%. So I think that was really the biggest difference in the game.
Well, you mentioned Miller and Dunn. Those guys certainly step up, but the team as a whole shot and passed so well. 10 3-pointers made for the Owls again. Miller, Dunn, and Hicks all made at least 3. And then look at the assist to turnovers. 15 assists to only 8 turnovers. The offense is playing unselfish. Damian Dunn mentioned it in that clip a little earlier. Guys are moving the ball better. If they don't turn it over and shoot this well, this is a trend you want to take into postseason play. This is something that could win the Owls a game or 2 when it comes tournament time.
And also defensively is where there definitely needs to be some improvement. Jaleel White did get injured. He hurt his ankle in that game. So you wonder kind of what would happen if he was there defensively, if Temple would have made a difference at all. But while the men's team prepares for a Thursday night matchup versus UCF, let's take a look at how the Golden Knights fared in their last game. UCF defeated Tulsa 68-49, holding the Golden Hurricane to 14 first-half points. Taylor Hendricks led UCF with 25 points, while Ithiel Thornton and CJ Kelly dropped 12 each. For Tulsa, Bryant Solabunke was the leading scorer. He had 12 points and 11 boards. Josiah McBride finished with 11 points, and Brandon Betson ended with 10 points.
A lot has changed since the Owls won an OT thriller over the Knights in late January.
Luke, what does Temple have to do in order to win this Thursday night matchup versus UCF?
Well, for Temple, it starts with defense. The Owls are top 5 in points allowed in the AAC, giving up under 70 points per game. In the first matchup between these teams, defense was the difference for the Owls. Temple had 8 steals and 5 blocks in the game. 3 Owls had multiple steals, and another 2 had multiple blocks. Everyone on the team stepped up defensively. Now, let's move over to the offense because the defense is what we know has to step up. For the offense, Caleb Battle's status still uncertain. The Owls are going to have to look to Damian Dunn to carry them offensively. For all the struggles Temple's had lately, Damian Dunn has been at his best, averaging 24 points over the last few games, including 34 points in the big game against Cincinnati. He only put up 8 points when these teams met in Orlando, but with added responsibility, I bet he's going to up his total back at home.
So 3 players for UCF have my eye, and they are Taylor Hendricks, Ithiel Thornton, and CJ Kelly. Hendricks is putting up about 15 points per game, while Horton and Kelly are each averaging around 12 points per game, respectively. Horton leads the team with 66 3-pointers made on 41% shooting from deep, so that's pretty impressive. Hendricks follows him with 54 made threes, and Kelly with 53. And Hendricks is also someone who can get things done on the defensive side of the ball. 48 blocks this season. This UCF and Temple are fairly similar statistically, shooting about their same percentage from the floor and from deep. But I think this game is going to come down to defense, like you said, and shooting well from the free throw line. The Owls defeated the Knights back on January 28th in OT behind Caleb Battle's 26 points. But it looks like there will be no battle in this Thursday night matchup, putting the pressure on the other top scorers.
Coming up, a change in gender. We'll look back at that road trip for the women's team.
Plus, we'll bring back Emily to see who she has her eye on for SMU, the women's team. That's the Owls' next opponent when we return in 90 seconds. Welcome back. The woman looking for that first win since February 1st. Aaliyah Nelson finds Karana Perea, who takes a dribble and knocks down the long-range 2. Next play, Nelson has it. Brittany Garner comes up and sets the ball screen, and Nelson tries to shake her defender, steps back and hits the 3 with a hand in her face. Shockers Shamaria Duncan gets it on the left wing and sinks the contested 3. She finished the game with 11 points. Tierra East with some great defense right here. She read that pass like a book, gets the steal and lays it in for 2. Temple trails 33-32. Nelson finds teammate Tariana Gary up court. Gary drives baseline and the Owls lead by 4 in the third. Nelson tries to extend Temple's lead, and she does. Somehow gets this floater to fall over Jane Asinde. Shockers ball, Cartesia Dean gets it down low and knocks down the turnaround J over Tierra East. Dean finishes with a career-high 22 points on senior day to go along with 10 boards. Owls trail by 4, and Perea intercepts this pass right here and kicks it ahead to Michaela Walid, who does a little Euro step and lays it in. Shockers lead by 2, and Asinde hits the jumper to put them up by 4. Wichita State turnover, and Nelson gets it to Gary out in transition, but it's just not enough. Temple drops its 6th straight, 79-67.
Temple ran out of steam in the final frame, putting up only 8 points in the fourth quarter. That's the 4th fewest points the Owls have scored in a single quarter this season. The Cherry and White were also out-rebounded by 15 in the game, which makes Temple 4-12 when it gets out-rebounded this season. Along with her team-high 16 points, Aaliyah Nelson dished a season-high 9 assists in the loss. And Brielle, I think this game was lost in the second half. The Shockers put up 46 points in the final 20 minutes, 30 of those coming in the third quarter. Give Temple a lot of credit for coming back. They trailed by 9 early in the first half, taking the lead at halftime, but the second half defense hurt them. Wichita State shot 64% from the field in the second half. No matter how good any team plays, you're not going to win many games when you let the opponent shoot that percentage.
And one thing I want to point out is that Temple was out-rebounded 39-24. So if you look back at Wichita State's previous game before Temple, they played SMU and they were really out-rebounded by the Mustangs. So they certainly bounced back versus Temple. And also Aaliyah Nelson, you know she's going to put on a show every single game. 16 points, Terriana Gary with 15, Corinda Pereira with 14 points. But one thing I want to mention about Correa is that all of her points were scored in the first half, and she only scored 8 points in the fourth quarter. The team did. They really get out to those slow starts, which really just kills them going down the stretch. And then Enos Piper gets those 2 fouls in the first minute of play, putting Temple essentially with 7 players.
Yeah, and another positive I want to look at from this game, the Owls only turned the ball over 10 times. Aaliyah Nelson, the point guard, she has the ball in her hands the whole game, 9 assists, just 1 turnover. Give Aaliyah Nelson a lot of credit in keeping those turnovers down in this game.
But we can't forget about the third member of our anchor trio who's been waiting to talk some women's hoops. Let's bring back Emilie Cochrane.
Emilie, these Mustangs have a strong 1-2 punch that Temple's going to have to watch out for.
That's right, guys. I've got my eye on 2 Mustangs in particular when thinking about this game. Savannah Wilkinson and Jasmine Smith, both seniors averaging 11 points per game and are extremely efficient from the three-point line. Both are also averaging 36 minutes in the Mustangs' last 4 games. Specifically, Wilkinson had 40 minutes in their last game against Memphis. Now, the main difference between these 2 teams is that, of course, they have a 15-person active roster, while Temple is still hanging out with their 8-person active roster with little wiggle room to switch players in and out. This is Temple's last matchup before they do head to Fort Worth to take on the AAC tournament. Winning this game would make them 6-10 in conference play, with, again, little wiggle room when it comes to the standings. That's all I have for the Leacorr Center today for both the men's and the women's teams, but we'll be back after spring break to talk more about this tournament when it's all said and done. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Em. On the evening before the men battle UCF, the women host their final regular game of the season against SMU. The Owls wrap up the season at home after a 2-game road trip. The game will be on ESPN Plus at 7 o'clock, and we'll also have coverage on our socials at Owl Sports Update.
It's almost tourney time for the Owls. We'll take one last look at the standings on the other side.
Plus, it's almost time for our weekly play breakdowns and a special guest. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Courts in Session. It's our final chance to look at the film ahead of the men's and women's conference tournaments.
You know what time it is. Another week for Luke and me to break down plays from both the men's and women's teams.
All right, I'm going to start with the men's game against Cincinnati. Final 35 seconds. Temple down by 3. They need to get the big stop. Nick Jourdain stands his ground, and Damian Dunn does the same defensively. So the Owls get the stop. Now pause it right here. Temple again down by 3. They have 1 timeout, but Aaron McKee elects not to use it. I think this is the right call. Don't let the defense get set. Don't let Cincinnati put their better defenders into the game. The Owls run it here. Now pause it right here. Zach Hicks gets a wide open 3, and he was open for a reason. It's because the defense was shaded to the far side where Damian Dunn was standing, and that's what left Zach Hicks all alone. Hyzier Miller had his eyes up the whole way down the floor. Zach Hicks ties the game.
Okay, my turn, Luke. So I'm going to be focusing on the women's team's most recent game versus Wichita State. What you're going to see here, pause it right here. Wichita State is in a 2-3 zone. They did that for a little bit of the first quarter just to see if Temple could knock down some shots from the outside. So play it again right here. Corina Perea is going to pop, but what she's going to do here is she's going to find the weak spot in the zone. So pause it right here. As soon as she gets the ball, that bottom middle defender is going to have to commit to her, but she commits a little bit too late. And Perea, you know, she can knock down those mid-range jumpers. So nice execution on offense from Temple.
Very nice. And the Owls are going to need a lot more of Corina Perea with the season coming to a close and the postseason on the horizon. Right now, the Owls sit in 9th of the 11 teams in the AAC. If the regular season ended today, Temple would play Wichita State in round 1 of the tournament. But the AAC did not consult with courts in session, and the regular season actually ends Wednesday. There are still a few opponents the Owls could match up with based on the season's final games.
On Wednesday, there will be 5 AAC women's games. At 7, we have USF versus Cincy and Temple versus SMU. At 7:30, UCF and Tulsa. And at 8 o'clock, Tulane versus Memphis and Wichita State versus Houston. There won't be many changes in AAC standings, but a few teams could move a spot or so before the postseason rankings are all firmed up.
With the season winding down, there's still so much to be decided, so we brought on WHIP Sports Director Declan Landis to discuss all the postseason scenarios.
So Declan, there's a full 5-game slate of AAC play to end the regular season on Wednesday. Are there any games that you could see potentially shaking up the standings heading into conference play?
Absolutely, Brielle. I mean, the 6 through 10 seeds are all up for question, but the big thing is the 5th seed. That's going to be the first round bye. So SMU plays Temple. They're in the 5th seed right now. That's going to be a question mark. If they win, they're in. But if they lose, Tulane versus Memphis is going to be the key to watch. Tulane can jump into that 5 seed, get that first round bye with a win and a loss from SMU. So that'll be something to look out for.
And Declan, I've got a different idea. I'm looking at UCF and Tulsa. This game impacts Temple because if UCF wins and Temple loses, the Owls fall to the 10th spot in the conference. That means they'd avoid USF in round 2. Now, I might be getting ahead of myself looking ahead to round 2 for a team that's still struggling to put together wins in conference play right now. But overall, this would be the easiest path moving forward for Diane Richardson's team. Now I got to ask you guys, if Temple does get at least one win in the AAC tournament for the women, do you deem that a successful season?
No doubt about it, but I think, Luke, regardless of how they fare in the tournament, this season is a success as it is. Diane Richardson, you can tell, is building something special in this program, and now she gets to do what she does best, and that's building it, recruiting, going out on the trail. If she can find a guard that can relieve some of that on-ball pressure, if they can dribble the ball and Aaliyah Nelson doesn't have to, and then they can get some rebounding presence on the interior, I think that's going to be key for them next year.
So I agree with what you said there, Declan. Richardson's first year as head coach, and there's a reason that she had 3 players follow her from Towson to Temple. So clearly she's doing something right. And 2 players voluntarily leaving the team in the middle of the season and 2 players being released from the team. That's not easy to deal with, no matter how long you've been coaching, yet alone as your first year. Also, Enos Piper breaking her nose, Corina Perea getting hurt in a game. It was just like the never-ending story of everything that could go wrong went wrong, but Richardson's been really impressive. So regardless, like what Declan said, even if they don't get a win, I think this season was impressive. And for the men's team outside Houston, which team do you guys think has potential of making the tournament?
I think the obvious answer is Memphis. They're 22-7 on the year, 12-4 in conference. They're 38th in the net rankings as well. That's going to be key. They're 2-3 in quad 1 wins, but they're 7-3 in quad 2, 7-1 in quad 3, and they've dominated quad 4. They will probably, in all likelihood, make the tournament as it is, but in a shootout against Houston and maybe the AAC title game, that's something to watch out for. They could keep up with the Cougars. They can't necessarily stop them defensively, but if it gets to that 70, 80-point range, they're going to be right there with them.
And I'm with you, Declan. They have the resume, but look at that offense. Top 2 in the conference in scoring in the AAC. Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams. Each of them top 6 in the conference in scoring individually. The committee looks at the resume of the team naturally, but they also look at who's going to give the best games. With the way Memphis is and the talent they have offensively, they're going to get into this tournament because of their offense and those 2 guys.
Thank you, Declan. It's break time. When we come back, it's time to revisit an NIL collective that started in the fall.
And we'll get one final look at the Temple schedules as the regular season wraps up. Courts in session. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. The Tough Fund is an NIL collective allowing Temple athletes to leverage their name, image, and likeness. The fund partnered with Hoops for Hope, which helps Philadelphia men experiencing homelessness find joy through the game of basketball. Here is the piece produced by our friends Brian Mermelstein and Jake Jesberger.
Basketball and sports in general are just kind of the ultimate equalizer. You know, like you kind of can be dealing with whatever in your personal life, and you show up on the court, and for an hour, however long it is, you get to kind of just like leave all your worries aside.
Our mission is to engage and empower folks experiencing homelessness, right? But it's also about breaking down the stigma, seeing that these guys are just as human as you and I. They can ball just the same as you and I. More and more people are learning about us, believe in us, supporting us. It's been fantastic, and I hope we can continue to grow like this. You know, they walked in and I said, oh, these guys are, you know, students from Temple, and they're on the basketball team, and like the guys' kind of eyes, like really their heads turned right away, and the smiles on their face, and they're looking up to the one guy who was like 7 foot tall. And it's cool that you guys in your program and everybody at Temple kind of sees us for what we are and wants to become involved in this.
It fills a gap where I think there's a lot of services in the city that treat a diagnosis or a symptom, but we created this league because it's just like a lot of these guys who are in these shelters, they don't have this space to just have fun and be human, and like, you know, the joy that like being able to create something or like go out and like use your body, it's something that I wish there was more opportunities for these guys to be able to do something like that. And so I hope more programs pop up that just kind of like let these guys be guys.
I felt like they inspired me. Watching them have fun out there and just purely enjoy the game for the game and what it is. They look like they were kids just having fun. And it just brings me back to my roots and how I started playing the game. And I was glad that as a Temple basketball player, I got to inspire them and even learn some wisdom from them. So it was a lot of fun. I feel like we inspired each other.
I think it's powerful. I think that Philadelphia gets a bad rap, but this shows the investment of the community into itself.
Temple is just like a historic university. It's as much of a staple in Philadelphia as like the Liberty Bell itself. So like to be able to get these guys who like probably haven't ever been to a collegiate sporting event to see like one of the most renowned universities in the area get to play basketball, I mean, that's an incredible opportunity. These guys will be able to watch these men that they met play basketball on TV, which is a really cool thing to be able to say that I know that guy, and I hope we continue this partnership moving forward.
The men's team wraps up the season with 2 more games. Senior night against UCF at home on Thursday night before traveling to Tulane for the season finale with the Green Wave on Sunday afternoon. Again, the women only have 1 game remaining. That'll be their senior night at the Leah Center against SMU on Wednesday night.
Coming up on Thursday, Jesse Dimich-Louvet and AJ Patel are back on the desk for our flagship Al Sports Update show. They'll have highlights from the lacrosse game on Saturday versus nationally ranked Princeton, plus the latest from Stan Drayton and a closer look at the entertainer, or as he calls himself, the hype guy on the mic during Temple games.
You don't know if you like something until you try it. Did I ever think this was a position or that I could do it? No. But now look at me now, and I'm going professional.
Is Temple spring break next week? You won't be able to fully get rid of our anchor trio.
Watch out for our conference tournament preview, a shorter version of the usual Courts in Session, but with even more info on the upcoming postseason for the men and women.
You can check it out on our social handles at Al Sports Update. But that's all the time we have for this week's edition of Courts in Session. But make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Al Sports Update for coverage of the upcoming men's and women's games as the postseason tourney approaches.
For Brielle Berry, Emilie Cochrane at the Leah Center, and the rest of our crew, I'm Luke Meli. We'll see you after spring break.